In the unforgiving world of professional boxing, where every jab carries weight and every misstep can alter a career, one cardinal rule reigns supreme: never underestimate your opponent. It's a mantra passed from trainer to trainee, a whispered warning in gyms around the world. But in rare instances, this rule isn't just broken, it's utterly disregarded. Sometimes a fighter is dismissed not for lack of talent, but because of biases and assumptions. Where they come from, how they look, or the weight class they compete in. Such was the story of Naoya Inoue, a man many overlooked, only to watch him rewrite their expectations with every punch he threw. Before the fall of 2017, Naoya Inoue was already known in Japan as a boxing prodigy. His dominance in the lower weight classes had drawn admiration and awe, but outside of his homeland he was still something of a mystery. The American boxing audience, notoriously skeptical of foreign talent, especially those from the lighter divisions, knew his name, but questioned his legitimacy. They wondered if his success was a product of geography rather than greatness. These doubts set the stage for a fight that would serve as a public announcement. Naoya Inoue had arrived, and he was here to dismantle more than just opponents. He was here to break narratives. Antonio Nieves, a confident American bantamweight from Cleveland, Ohio, was the man chosen to stand opposite Inoue in the latter's U.S. debut. Nieves was no slouch. He had a solid professional record, boasting 18 wins, 9 by knockout, and only 1 split decision loss. When he signed the contract to face Inoue in September 2017, Nieves wasn't just agreeing to be a stepping stone. He genuinely believed he could win. Or at the very least, he projected that belief with every fiber of his being. He viewed Inoue through a narrow lens, as a smaller man who had fought in the lighter flyweight divisions, someone who had never ventured beyond Japan's borders. Nieves saw vulnerability. What he failed to see was the storm headed his way. In the days leading up to the fight, Nieves was vocal about his skepticism. He questioned Inoue's strength, doubted the level of competition he had faced, and laughed off the hype that surrounded him. Has he really been tested? Nieves asked during a pre-fight interview, his tone dismissive and condescending. All his fights have been in Japan. Half of them were at 108 pounds. Come Saturday, we're going to shock the world. It was a declaration fueled by either supreme confidence or ignorance. Either way, those words would echo back with bitter irony in the aftermath of the bout. September 9, 2017, marked the night that Inoue stepped into a U.S. ring for the first time. The venue was Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California, a place known for hosting some of the most electric fights in recent boxing memory. The atmosphere was buzzing with curiosity. American fight fans had heard whispers of this Japanese phenom dubbed the Monster. Now they would finally see if the legend held up under the bright lights of an American audience. Nieves arrived, brimming with confidence, draped in the red, white, and blue, a symbol of patriotism and pride. He carried himself like a man who was ready to seize his moment on the world stage. In contrast, Inoue entered with a stark poise, his demeanor calm and focused, as though already aware of how the night would unfold. There were no theatrics, no flamboyant gestures, only the cold, silent assurance of a man who came prepared to silence doubters. From the opening bell, the contrast between the two fighters was striking. Inoue wasted no time establishing control, working behind a sharp, snapping jab that immediately disrupted Nieves's rhythm. His footwork was masterful, subtle, pivots, crisp angles, and effortless control of distance. Every movement had purpose. There was no wasted energy, no uncertainty. While Nieves tried to press forward, hoping to impose his will, he quickly found himself reacting rather than initiating. The early round saw Inoue systematically dismantling Nieves's approach. He didn't rush in or hunt for an early knockout. Instead, he probed, studied, and dissected. His combinations were clean, timed to perfection, and often punctuated with powerful body shots that landed with sickening thuds. The crowd, initially leaning toward the American fighter, began to murmur in disbelief as Inoue's dominance became increasingly undeniable. By the second round, Inoue had found his rhythm. His left hook to the body began to make its presence felt. These were not reckless swings. They were targeted, deliberate, and destructive. Each one seemed to take a piece of Inoue's resolve. The American, once so confident, started to flinch, his breathing heavier, his footwork slower. Inoue was dictating the pace and painting a masterclass in controlled aggression. In the third round, Inoue stepped up the tempo. He began landing crisp combinations, switching levels from head to body and back again with such speed that Inoue could hardly mount a defense. Every time he tried to retaliate, Inoue countered with ruthless efficiency. The fight had ceased to be competitive. It was now a showcase of superiority. Inoue's corner could see the writing on the wall. Their fighter was absorbing punishing blows, especially to the midsection. Inoue's left hook had become a haunting presence, a punch that Inoue could neither avoid nor endure. In the fifth round, that very punch dropped Inoue to the canvas, for the first time in his professional career. He rose, showing grit, but his body language betrayed him. He was hurt. The fight had slipped beyond his grasp. Inoue, sensing the end was near, pressed forward with calculated ferocity. He didn't become reckless. He maintained his composure, continuing to target the body with frightening precision. Inoue tried to hold on, to tie up, to survive, but Inoue's relentless assault offered no refuge. Between rounds, his corner had seen enough. The punishment was mounting. The will was fading. And so, at the end of the sixth round, the towel was thrown in. The fight was over, and with it any questions about whether Inoue belonged on the global stage. He had not only defended his WBO junior bantamweight title, he had made a profound statement. Against a brash, determined opponent in Inoue, Inoue showed the world what it meant to be not just a champion but a phenomenon. His U.S. debut was a resounding success, and in its wake, he vaulted into the top 10 of many pound-for-pound lists. But for Inoue, that night wasn't the culmination of a journey. It was merely a beginning. The victory over Inoue opened the floodgates for greater recognition and even tougher challenges. In his next outing, Inoue faced Yoan Boyo, a tough, experienced Frenchman with an impressive record. Boyo promised movement and finesse, vowing not to stand still like many of Inoue's previous victims. But as the fight unfolded, it became clear that strategy alone was no match for Inoue's execution. By the third round, another brutal body shot put Boyo on his knees. He tried to rise, tried to fight on, but a second crushing hook ended the bout shortly thereafter. It was another emphatic victory, another confirmation that Inoue was operating on a different level. The real turning point in Inoue's global ascent came with his entry into the World Boxing Super Series, WBSS, a tournament designed to crown the best bantamweight in the world. In 2018, at the WBSS Draft Gala, Inoue chose to face Juan Carlos Payano in the opening round, a bold choice as Payano was a former unified world champion who had never been stopped. Many anticipated a grueling battle, but the fight lasted less than a round. Payano came out aggressive, hoping to establish his presence early. Inoue, ever patient, waited for the right opening, and when it came, he struck with clinical brutality. A jab followed by a straight right hand landed flush on Payano's chin. The former champion collapsed motionless, his eyes blinking up at the ceiling lights. The knockout was so sudden, so clean, that the crowd sat stunned for a moment before erupting. That punch would later be named Ring Magazine's Knockout of the Year, a fitting accolade for a fighter who was beginning to make violent artistry his signature. Inoue's momentum only grew stronger. Before entering the WBSS, he had also faced Ricardo Rodriguez in a 2017 bout that further reinforced his standing. Rodriguez was viewed as a dangerous contender, having won 4 consecutive fights and showing considerable power. Yet against Inoue, he looked out of his depth. The Japanese champion picked him apart with sharp jabs and punishing hooks, eventually dropping him twice in the third round and forcing a stoppage. It was yet another example of Inoue turning expectations into dust. What made Inoue so frightening wasn't just his power, though that certainly played a major role. It was how he used it. His left hook to the body had become the stuff of nightmares. a weapon so precise and devastating that it often ended fights on its own. But beyond that, his intelligence, his timing, and his adaptability set him apart. He didn't just outpunch his opponents, he outthought them. He adapted on the fly, exploited weaknesses, and maintained composure in every scenario. Fighters who entered the ring thinking they could walk through his punches quickly learned otherwise. Those who believed he was untested were forced to reevaluate after just a few rounds. Time and again, Inoue proved that greatness isn't tied to where you fight, but how you fight. The ring is the ultimate equalizer, and in that space, Inoue was king. By the time the dust settled on his early run in the bantamweight division, Inoue wasn't just a champion, he was a phenomenon. The man once doubted for fighting in Japan, once mocked for his size, was now being discussed alongside the sport's elite. He had crossed borders, silenced critics, and inspired awe among fans and analysts alike. But for Inoue, the mission was far from over. There were still new challenges ahead, new belts to unify, new legends to confront. His journey was not just about collecting titles, it was about redefining what was possible for a fighter from the lighter divisions. He carried not only the pride of Japan but the aspirations of every fighter who had ever been dismissed because they didn't fit the mold. Naoya Inoue didn't just come to America, he came to conquer. And in doing so, he reminded the boxing world of a truth that had been forgotten. Real monsters don't roar, they don't shout or brag. They arrive, they dominate, and they leave no doubt behind.